Bonjour class. I just wanted to post a quick little video explaining indirect object pronouns just because we went out of order. So you should watch the grammar tutorial with the little French cartoon guy also because it has a little information I'm not going over. But since we went out of order and we skipped this subject, he's assuming you don't know what direct object pronouns are, and I sort of want to show you both together so that you sort of get the idea of the difference between the two. So I thought it'd be helpful to just put up a little video. If you like these videos, you find them helpful, just send me an email and let me know. I'm happy to put them up. The French grammar tutorial little cartoon guy, he does a good job, so I haven't been, but if you think you need them, just let me know and I'm happy to do them anytime. Okay, so last week you learned about direct objects and how to replace those in a sentence with a pronoun. So just a quick reminder, I know you know this, but just to remind, the direct object comes directly after the verb. So in this sentence, l'étudiant is the direct object, and we learned we could replace that. L'étudiant would be replaced with le, and so we could say le prof le regarde. The teacher looks at him. Okay, so that's just a quick reminder because now we're doing indirect object pronouns. So indirect objects, actually this isn't right, indirect objects, not the pronouns. Indirect objects are introduced by the preposition a in French, always, for our purposes. So in this sentence, le prof parle à l'étudiant. À l'étudiant is an indirect object. And that's just because it's introduced with a. So this one follows directly after the verb. That's a direct object. If it's introduced by a, it's now a indirect object. Indirect objects can be replaced in a sentence with a pronoun, just like direct objects can, but the pronouns, some of them are different. So instead of le or la or el apostrophe, you use lui, which means to him or to her. And instead of les, you use leur, which means to them. Fortunately, these indirect object pronouns go in the exact same place as direct object pronouns, and that's true in every tense. I will show you a couple of examples in a little bit. So we have le prof parle à l'étudiant. That's a question. Le prof parle à l'étudiant is the teacher talking to the student. À l'étudiant, that whole thing is our indirect object. We can replace all of that with lui so that when we answer this question, we're not being repetitive. So when we answer, we can say, yes, the teacher talks to him. So oui, le prof lui parle. And if we want to make it negative, it's just like with direct object pronouns. It goes around the pronoun and the verb. Non, le prof ne lui parle pas. The teacher's not talking to him. Okay, just a reminder that a makes a contraction with le and les, so it's possible you'll see o, right, au, or o, the plural form, aux, instead of a. So here's an example of that. Le prof parle aux étudiants. This is still the preposition a. It's just in a contraction form with les. So aux étudiants is our indirect object. We're going to replace that one with leur because it's plural, so that when we answer, so the question is, the teacher's talking to the students. We're going to say, yes, the teacher's talking to them. Oui, le prof leur parle. And again, if we wanted to make it negative, no, the teacher's not talking to them. Non, le prof ne leur parle pas. Okay, so put the ne pas around the pronoun and the verb. Okay, so you may have been thinking about this, or maybe not, maybe haven't noticed it yet, but it is possible to have both a direct object and an indirect object in the same sentence. For example, you can give something to someone. So, tu donnes le livre à Sophie. You give the book to Sophie. So in this sentence, le livre. We can tell that's the direct object because it's coming directly after the verb. And the à Sophie part is the indirect object because it's introduced with à. We can answer this question by replacing either of those pronouns or both of the pronouns, which we're not going to do because we haven't learned the order yet, but eventually you'll be able to do both. So you give the book to Sophie? We could answer that, yes, I give it to Sophie. That would be replacing the direct object, right? So je le donne, I give it to Sophie, à Sophie. So we've kept the indirect object. It's not a pronoun. We replaced the direct object with a pronoun. Or we could answer, I give her the book. So in that case, we're replacing the indirect object, à Sophie, with a pronoun and keeping le livre. So we could say, oui, oops, what am I doing? Je lui donne le livre. I give the book to her. Literally, I to her give the book. Okay. So, in French, certain verbs take a, the preposition a, and some of these are different than in English, how we use them in English, because we usually think of a as to. Some verbs that take a in French, we use a different preposition in English. So those are just sort of, you just kind of want to note it in your mind. But these are the verbs you're going to see in the activities where you're dealing with indirect object pronouns. These are the ones that are going to come up over and over again in the activities you'll do in VHL Central. So here they are. You demandez à quelqu'un. You ask someone. So in French, you say you demandez à. You ask like of them, or you ask literally to them. You don't say that in English. You donnez à quelqu'un. You give to someone. You envoyez à quelqu'un. You send to someone. You montrez à quelqu'un. You show something to someone. The to someone is the indirect object. You prêtez à quelqu'un. You loan to someone. You posez une question à quelqu'un. You ask a question to someone in French. I just wanted to note real quickly, demander à is to ask. Poser une question à is to ask a question specifically. So if you're going to say une question, you want to use the verb poser. So you can ask something of someone. You can ask them to do something, or you can ask a question of someone. So if you're using the word question, you want to use poser. If you mess this up, they'll still understand you. But usually when you're using the word question, you use poser instead of demander. All right. You parlez à quelqu'un. You talk to someone. Here's a funny one. You téléphonez à quelqu'un. You telephone to them. You make a phone call to them. So they use à in French with téléphoner. You achetez à quelqu'un. This one's also different. You can buy something for someone, and the for someone is introduced with à in French. You apportez quelque chose à quelqu'un. You take something to someone. That's the same as in English. So I just put an example with téléphoner because it's kind of funny. You think that you call someone and that someone must be a direct object, but not in French. In French, you use à with téléphoner. So you need to use the indirect object pronoun lui. Je lui téléphone. I call him. Okay, so literally you're saying I call to him. I know. It's kind of weird. Indirect object pronouns, like I was saying, they go in the same place as direct object pronouns, and that's true in all tenses. So we've been doing the present tense, oui, je lui téléphone. If you have more than one verb, like what happens in the future tense with aller, tu vas téléphoner à Michel? You're going to call Michel? We're going to put the pronoun to replace à Michel, which is lui. We're going to put it in the same place we would if it was a direct object pronoun. So if you remember, I kind of like to chop it up into two sentences in my mind. So I would say, I'm going, to call him. I don't know, for some reason that helps me. Je vais, and then lui téléphoner. And if you want to make that negative, the ne pas is going to go around the first verb. And so again, I kind of chop it up in my mind. I'm not going to call him. Je ne vais pas lui téléphoner. So that's if you have more than one verb. Let's look at the passé composé. Tu as téléphoné à Michel? Did you call Michel? We're going to say, I called him, or I called to him technically, right? So à Michel, it's going to be replaced with lui. All right, we're going to put it in the same place that we were putting direct object pronouns, but this is actually a little bit easier. So remember, this one moves, it goes before the auxiliary verb. So we're going to say, I called him, je lui ai téléphoné. I should have made this a feminine Michel to make my point here. So let's pretend that this is a woman, Michel, and we're going to say I called her. So with direct object pronouns, you remember you have to make the past participle agree with the direct object pronoun. This is where indirect object pronouns are great. They don't agree. You just leave it alone. So I called her, je lui ai téléphoné. No need to add an extra E. You don't want to. Okay, oh, and to make it negative, let's do that. Non, I didn't call her. Je ne lui ai pas. So put it around the pronoun and the auxiliary verb. Je ne lui ai pas téléphoné. Okay, more indirect pronouns. So just like we had with direct object pronouns, there are a few more because you can someone could call to me or talk to me, someone could talk to us, right? So there's a few more pronouns. They're the same as the direct object pronouns, the other ones, the extra ones, but remember lui and le are a little different. So these are familiar. It's me, which is to me, or m apostrophe if the next word starts with a vowel. Te is the informal singular, nous is to us, and vous is to you if you're addressing someone in a formal way, or you mean like you guys, right, the plural. So just like this one is a direct object, right? Il nous aime, he likes us. This is a direct object because you aimer quelqu'un, there's no a in there, right? So il nous aime, that's a direct object. Il nous téléphone, that's an indirect object. But they're the same. So this isn't too hard. This is technically he calls to us, right? Il nous téléphone. So let's just take il parle real quickly and run through all of them in the present tense just really fast. So he talks to me, me, right? Il me parle. He talks to you, informal person by themselves, one person. Il te parle. He talks to him. Remember, to him is lui. Il lui parle. He talks to her. Remember, it doesn't change. It's the same. Il lui parle. He talks to us. Nous. Il nous parle. He talks to you, formal person, or you guys. Il vous parle. And he talks to them. Remember, the plural one is leur. Il leur parle. That's it. It's not too bad, right? Go ahead and watch the grammar tutorial. You can read the first activity is that reading, where you read through. And I know it's always a little too much information, but it's a good resource and it doesn't hurt to skim over it, even if it's not totally making sense. Then watch the little French video guy and do the assigned activities. And if you have any trouble, any problems, you're not getting it, feel free. Come to my office hours, send me an email. We can chat if the office hours don't work for you. I'm just, whatever you need. Okay, au revoir. À bientôt.